Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to another session of Chronicles of Darkness, Vampire the Requiem, a Requiem for London. Tonight we find ourselves at the circus. Yes, that very same circus whose ringmaster is nobody else than Joshua Bainforth. And the circus has also been playing host to one Marcus Irons of the Ordre de Cool, who is laying low, just trying his best to stay out of trouble after, how shall we say, being at the wrong place at the wrong time when Mr. Goodman was being more than just interviewed by the police. But that's that. We find the camera moving in front of a door, a very plain door to a room, and on that door is stuck a small post-it note in not quite immaculate handwriting, but obviously somebody has tried to write very nicely with "Please knock." And with that, I shall hand the baton to the other player.
Farthingdale will approach the door, unseen by anyone watching, and then he'll notice the note. Please knock. Thunk, 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 thunk. Thunk, thunk, thunk.
Enter.
The door will be swung open. An invisible man enters. He does not drop obfuscate. Interesting enough, Farthingdale can interact with doors without dropping obfuscate. So door opens, nothing comes in. Door swings shut.
Marcus, who was sitting on a rather battered old leather chair, will stand up and narrow his eyes. Show yourself or expect battle.
That's not very polite of you, house guest.
Oh, it's you. Okay, for a moment I thought it was an assassin of some sort.
He appears with a slight smile, and it's only then that you notice he's carrying quite a vicious-looking sickle in one of his hands. I could have been.
But your actions speak differently. So, Mr. Farthingdale, what can I do for you?
Well, you're our guest, and I wondered if you might be interested in learning about the Lancashire, since you're living among us.
Marcus's hard expression softens somewhat, and he sits down. Heck, you'd be the first Lancashire to actually bother. Marcus looks around, grabs another chair, puts it vis-a-vis. Sure, I've got nothing better to do.
Okay. Do you know how the first Lancashire came to be?
I have to profess I'm rather unknowledgeable on the subject.
Very well. What do you know about the story of the crucifixion?
That Jesus of Nazareth was crucified. There were two other criminals also crucified beside him. What else? What is in Sunday school? Yeah, of course. That some of his followers were in the vicinity of Golgotha. What else? Supposedly on the spot where Jesus was crucified, the bones of Adam were buried. And wait, there was a legionary. And a legionary stabbed him in the side with a lance. Well, or a long spear.
Precisely. And it is of that legionary that I wish to speak. That legionary was Longinus, son of Livia. And Longinus, when he struck Christ's side, had some of the blood of Christ pass into his mouth, unwittingly, I suspect. But in so doing, he became both blessed and cursed. Blessed with life as a vampire, and cursed to forever serve as the monster in the dark.
Marcus produces a notebook and pen and is diligently noting down stuff.
And that is the fundamental purpose of the Lancare et Sanctum. It is our duty to ensure that humans and vampires alike are protected from hell, that we defend their souls by teaching them through fear and example. When someone wishes to, let us say you have a person who beats their spouse at home.
Marcus's expression darkens.
The Lancare, should we find out about this, will arrive. And depending upon the Lancare in question, I myself would be inclined to make them experience the same terror and fear that they inflict on others. But there are other members of the Lancare who would simply torture the person until they appreciated the negatives of pain. And if that person is willing to learn, then they can be saved. But if someone is utterly beyond salvation, utterly beyond redemption, then we have little trouble expunging them from the world. Souls bound for hell should not be delayed in their journey there.
And who decides what behavior is acceptable and not? Who lays down the parameters?
Those more learned in the faith, those who are able to interpret the signs, some even receive divine messages, direction from heaven. And of course, we observe, we watch. Humans and vampires who give in to inner monstrosity tend to be marked by the Lancare for redeeming. We can't save everyone, but every soul we can save is one fewer facing damnation.
Interesting. So you suppose that kindred have a soul, as do humans?
Of course. Souls are part of us. Our every action weighs upon our soul, good and ill. I assume that you don't believe in the soul.
Far from it. The more I am coming into the existence of being a kindred, the more I'm convinced that we do have one.
Have you ever wondered? You're a member of the Ordo Dracul, are you not?
That is true.
Those whom I am told claim to spit in God's eye.
I've got a slightly different view on the matter, but I guess you could say that is the official propaganda.
Think of it like this. You are but an ant, clawing his way through the ground of life. And then you spot that there is a vast creature, much greater and more terrible than you can comprehend, far beyond your minuscule scale. And then you turn and you attempt to spit at such creature, in the eye of such a creature, even though its sight is so far beyond you. What do you think that creature will do, if it notices you at all?
It might be amused. It would most likely just crush.
Precisely. The Ordo Dracul can tell themselves that they spit in God's eye, but in truth, they are so far beneath his notice that the Lord likely doesn't even recognize what they're doing. Or if he does, he has no interest in responding.
Or here is an idea. Or maybe he knows, and he lets us.
Possibly. But
I personally always rather saw it as our condition is what it is, but it's not in my nature to just lie down and go, oh, woe is me.
nor is that the nature of the Lancea. We are God's avenging angels. We are not mere lapdogs. We have a duty to fulfill, and we will fulfill it, whatever the cost to ourselves.
I am more of the opinion that I just dare try and see what this condition is actually able to do. And after all, if a being so vast beyond our knowledge were to put on a curse and would be as omnipresent as is often said, then even in that striving we would just fail and fail and fail again. The fact that I'm able to do what I'm able to do is a sign that it hasn't been barred.
But therein lies the point. Your order claims to spit in the Almighty's eye. What you are describing is that you were given a puzzle by the Almighty.
One could say so. Pardon me.
And as you solve that puzzle little bit by little bit, he is pleased by your successes. You are still doing his will. He wants you to succeed. And so you're doing what he set you to do, fulfilling your destiny, your part in his grand design. The Lancea does precisely the same thing. We fill our duty.
Mr. Farthingdale.
Yes.
Have you ever come across the concept of what we conventionally call God in the Western world is an entity, but that it's far from separate from us or the reality we find ourselves in? That it might be considered a will, a knowledge, a being that is very grand and that encompasses everything. And that the different levels of, let's say, intelligences that you find with different animals, humans, ourselves, that we're nothing else than ever the finest spider threads, or one might even say tiny droplets of this almost unknowable, all-encompassing being that puts a tiny amount of itself into physical form, into all the different animals, all the different people, all the different kindred, and probably also a lot of other supernatural creatures that might stalk the night and I'm unaware of.
That is possible. Unlikely, based on what I've seen, but certainly possible.
I almost see it as aspects of aspects that have fallen for the illusion that they are their bodies, that I am Marcus, but that I am only my body. I don't quite believe that. This is a vehicle, a limited vehicle, for me to experience reality from a point of view that isn't all-knowing, all-being. What the purpose of this is, I can only speculate and guess. But maybe the creator doesn't mind putting himself, even if it's just for a short time, into the viewpoints of his creation. Maybe to have more love and empathy for it, or maybe greater self-knowledge. Who knows? Maybe we are a way of the universe to know itself. Maybe not.
Very possibly. But then again, the world is so full of pointless suffering. I can't imagine that a God that was part of this world would tolerate it. The Lankaea has always been the Almighty's hand. The world is so dark. If the greatest of lights were to stand as part of our world, there would be no dark. So we can only presume a distance between us. We are the bearers of his light, as demonstrated by the fact that we can, with his aid, perform miracles.
Ever thought that that energy might be coming from within than being drawn upon from without?
If that were the case, I would be able to do it with the same ease as I am able to become invisible or to instill fear. It doesn't quite work the same way.
Almost as if one was limiting oneself. I have found that within boundaries, you learn to grow beyond yourself.
When the opportunity arises, I think you and Joshua should have a long conversation on the subject. He is more capable. he studied more into the lore required for the rituals, the summoning of divine favor. My own talents are somewhat limited in that respect for the moment. Perhaps that's why he's higher in the faith than I.
Yeah. And yes, one thing I can definitely agree upon. A dear friend of mine, back when I was breathing and fighting for survival, as so many of the homeless do, he talked to me about many different things. Some of them I was more willing to listen to, some less. But he did say that there was, ever so long a time ago, a time where all the thinking beings were closer to the supernal, closer to, if you pardon the language, the heavenly. But there was even a little tale he told, how it came that mankind fell and got cut off from the higher. However, I don't want to bore you with tales if you wouldn't even be willing to entertain them.
I must admit, the idea of a blissful Eden time does fit with Lancare doctrine. Your friend sounds like they would have been a priest among us.
Mm.
A member of the clergy.
Mm. He was definitely more than he seemed, although he walked in human garb.
So do we.
Yeah. However, he was helping me heal, or to use a more common parlance, get my shit together.
That is often difficult.
It is. But he was helping me. I was getting away from addiction and sorrows and burdens that I wasn't confronting until he came along. He was very much the good soul of our group. After I met him, I was even having dreams, but that's now neither here or there. The kindred who did, and he gestures to himself, this to me. I came across him as he was draining the last life out of my dear friend. I didn't quite know what I was facing, but I knew one thing. I'd always fought for the things that I cared for, and I tried my best to fight this creature off, but it was to no avail. I didn't really have a chance. The cricket bat I had, as I smashed it upon that creature's shoulder, burst into pieces. It took me, it turned me, and it most likely did a lot of horrific things that I just can't remember. The pain, the anguish, the desperate struggle. I tried to get my friend off him. I failed. Next thing I remember is, still somewhat blood crazed, being commanded to dig a shallow ditch ditch. It wasn't even a proper grave, just a hole to have the body just dumped there by the creature, forcing me, imposing its will upon me to cover up the body of poor Harry. Didn't even let me put a stone, a marker, or anything there. Dragged me away, held me captive. I don't know how my dear pet, a dog that I rather cherish, found me, but it did, and with my newly discovered abilities, I was able to talk with him. He brought the others of my friends, and in an opportune moment, they helped me liberate myself, and we fled. We've gone. I still feel guilty that so far I haven't been able to go back and give Harry a proper burial. But before I can do that, I have to grow stronger. He just sighs and shakes his head. Turns out the guy I thought was an Invictus Ventrue is apparently a gangrel called the Wolf, who has been responsible for at least in the past, for the creation of kindred with tampered vitae, such as myself. I think the common parlance for the kind of kindred I are is berserker, and he gives a lopsided smile.
Berserker.
Apparently, others of my kind tend to go mad rather quickly, but seems I've been bucking the trend.
May I present you a slightly alternative suggestion?
Go ahead.
You were living on the streets. You and Harry, didn't you say?
Yes, Harry and my two other friends, but pardon me if I don't feel like sharing their names with kindred that I don't know yet that well.
That's fair enough.
They are dear to me. That's all you need to know.
I understand. But think. Harry's soul now is with God. His passing was cruel, true, but it opened your eyes, gave you a chance to serve something higher than yourself and do good in the world. You are no longer homeless, you are no longer without resource. You have the ability to act for good in the world. And I suspect that if you were to call his soul back from the beyond and present him with all your actions, all your deeds, he would find them to be worthy of the price he paid to ensure it happened. A good man who was sacrificed, it's true, but whose sacrifice gave you the chance to save many more lives. Just like, to use a mortal example, a police officer or soldier who places their own life in mortal peril to allow their colleagues to escape, to save others at another time. We cannot always see the web, the skein of fate, but it is ever about us.
Interesting that you also mentioned soldiers. You have one in front of you. Somebody who genuinely thought that the peril he put himself in, the men he led, the cause he was fighting for was just to find out that it was just to line the pockets of those who are addicted to petroleum, just for the profits of people who can't even be bothered to really risk anything, to be lied to. I thought that I was serving my country, that I was protecting my people by taking the fight to the enemy. As it turned out, I was just there to give a veneer and let others line their pockets.
Perhaps so. But as I say, everyone has a part to play. Your friends' parts, well, they moved you to this point. Your own actions have moved you this far further. Every step you take is a choice. A choice as to whether or not you wish to fight your destiny or serve it, fulfill it. My advice to you is try to be your destiny. Try to hear that voice in the heavens telling you to be better. And when you find that voice, when you hear the calling, don't ignore it. Otherwise, everything you've suffered, everything that others have endured to bring you this far, will truly have been for nothing.
There is a slight twitch on Marcus's temple.
You might think that Farthingdale is quite a good preacher.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, I don't know what my role is. I don't know what my fate is. Let's just say I helped bring forth life into this world. And of that, I'm very glad and happy. There are actions, and well, one action I wish I hadn't done, but then again, it was a choice between bad and worse. And at the time, I was acting in good faith. But let's just say that life that I brought forth, what I taught them, was to be true to themselves and to do what they genuinely think is right. Yes, I might have the physical pleasure I feel, or to be more precise, the beast feels when I feed, but it is I who decides that I'll keep my vitae up. It is I that only takes what I eat. It is I who decides not to drain a vessel dry, to rob them of life and rob them of potential. And that's the reason why, and he points to a black sword that looks as if it were literally made of shadows. And I'm also willing to right a wrong unknowingly, as I might have done it. And I'm willing to fight so that others can sleep soundly. But what I see is just kindred squabbling amongst each other, ignoring the other dangers that are out there, too much caught up in their petty politics to see what threatens us as a group. Everyone has a different view on things, and I can respect that. But it is very disheartening that we're not uniting against a common enemy. And what I saw, what happened to those poor policemen, they didn't deserve to die. But I could only watch impotently. The only small consolation I have is that I was able to get that inspector away, that I could command him to run and not engage. At least one life saved.
You actually see Farthingale smile, and he stands up, and he goes over to you, and he puts his hand on your shoulder, and says, "I see potential in you, my young friend. I see yet the hope and chance of escaping the fate that so many walk to unknowing. And do you know why?"
He lifts his head, and although there is a slightly sad expression, not you could guess from remembering the horrors that he witnessed, he looks up and goes, "Go ahead."
In part, it's because of the fact that you speak of wishing to defend others, to shield them from the monsters in the night. You speak like a Lancashire. But there is one other thing that I think you may have missed. You spoke of vessels because you could not bear to say the word humans. And that is an astonishingly human trait. That to me says that you haven't forgotten who you were, and your soul is still yet your own. Cling to that, Marcus. Cling to it as if the very fires of hell licked at you. Because believe me when I say, they do. And you must be ready to burn in the place of others. For that is all we are truly worth. Being the pyre so others can be spared. And you actually see a moment of, it's a very strange expression on a man with extensive clan makeup. But you would guess he looks, for a moment, grieved at something. And then he seems to regain control of his face.
Farthingale will be able to see an expression of pity, commiseration. It's definitely a more empathic expression. And Marcus says, I didn't expect it, but turns out there seems to be more common ground between us than I expected. However, I've got the feeling I've just talked about myself and myself. Is there something troubling you?
I did something. Something I regret. And something that in time I will answer for. for the Almighty in all likelihood. But it is not for now. I must continue my duty, do as much good as I can.
Mm.
And you see, like him, it looks a bit like a rosary bead, except that you'll notice that each of the points of the cross, like the two arms and the base, each have small blades sticking out of them that he appears to have attached perhaps with something like super glue. And he is making small little cuts into his thumb with it as he seems to anoint it.
Marcus, who thankfully is fully fed, looks upon it with, curiosity.
In any case, if you'll excuse me, I have duties to attend to and prayers to perform. But remember what I've said. You have potential. Don't allow yourself to forget that. Go with God, Marcus Irons. And with that, he disappears. Again, the door will swing open with no apparent touch, and then will swing shut with no apparent touch.
Marcus is left pondering Farthingale's words. He makes a few more notes because for the longest time he actually stopped making notes as Farthingale was getting into a speech. He does a few. He writes a word, a last word, puts a question mark in it as he closes it, and gives a short whistle as a almost fully grown male Rhodesian Ridgeback comes out from hiding, licking Marcus's face. Marcus smiling, scratching it behind his ears, saying, well done, Rusty. And he just ponders a little more as he absent-mindedly strokes the hound's head. And with that, we shall end the scene. Thank you, players, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. This was another scene for Requiem for London. See you next time.